Okay, today we're going to talk about finding the volume of prisms and also of pyramids and cones. So I want to talk to you a little bit though about your formula sheet. If you recall, I've given everybody a formula sheet. It's either on yellow or pink paper, and you should have that right in your binder. One of the things to keep in mind is remember that the formulas that are listed on here, we are doctoring up. We are changing them slightly, and we're making them a little more user-friendly, I would say, for finding the area, volume, and later on when we do surface area and such. So what we're going to talk about right now, though, is just volume of prisms. And when we talk about any kind of prism at all, when we're finding the volume, we want to remember that our formula that we're going to use, again, different than what's on your formula sheet, because if you remember this, it will guide you through the formula. So you really don't have to memorize a new thing. You're just using the information you already memorized on those basic 6 shapes of triangle, square, rectangle, circle, etc. So to find the volume of any prism at all, remember we're going to find the area of the base. I remember you want to write it out like this in parentheses, and we're going to take that, whatever that area of the base is, and we're going to multiply it by the height. Now the key thing to keep in mind is that this height here that we're referring to, this height is the height of the prism itself, because you recall that we have the height of a triangle, and sometimes our prism could have a base that's a triangle. So we have 2 heights that we're actually talking about. We'll see that in just a moment. But right now we're just going to talk about the height of the prism itself. We're going to first of all do a rectangular prism. Remember I talked about how you can draw it out by making a rectangle. And also a cube would be the same thing, but a rectangular prism or a cube, they have the same properties. And then once we draw our 2 rectangles like that, we just connect our lines like so, and then we have our rectangular prism. Let's go ahead and give some measurements. We're going to call this 6 inches. We're going to call this 5 inches. And we're going to call this 4 inches. Now keep in mind that one of these is the length, one of these is the width, and one of these is the height. And we're going to worry about which one is which in just a little bit. But back to my formula to find the area of this, or excuse me, the volume of this. The area of the base is what I need first. Well, if I look at this area of the base, and I look at my shape over here, my base is clearly a rectangle. This would be my base down here on the bottom. So that is a rectangle. The length and width of my rectangle is length and width here. So that's all I need to find the area of a rectangle is length times width. So I'm going to put LW there. But now also with my volume formula is I have, after I get the area of the base, I also need the height, remember the height of the prism. So in this case, the height of the prism is 4. It's this part right here. This would be my height of my prism. So now that I have that, there's my actual formula to find volume. Now on your formula sheet, this is it. This is the formula. But I could either memorize 3 or 4 different more formulas, or I can just remember this right here. If I remember that basic formula, this is going to help me to find volume of prisms, and actually again when we get to doing our volume of pyramids as well, which I'll show you again before the end of the video. So now that I have this, I'm just plugging in numbers. My length was 6, my width was 5, and my height was 4. Remember that all these letters are right next to each other, which means that we are multiplying all those numbers together. When I type it on the calculator, I get 120. But remember too, I need my unit of measure. This is all inches. And it's a cube, inches cubed, because my shape is basically a cube, right? It's a rectangular prism, so I'm seeing how many little cubes will go in there. 120 1-inch cubes will go in that shape there. One of the things to keep in mind too, it's a 3D shape, right? If it's a 3D shape, then it's going to be my unit cubed. If it's a 2D shape, flat shape, then it's going to be my unit squared. So that's another way to think about this. Okay, let's look at a cylinder. Now a cylinder is still kind of a prism, even though it's got the curved sides and all. We're going to make a circle at the top and 2 straight lines, and then a circle at the bottom. Actually more of an oval, I guess I'd say. Now let's say that we have, on this one we have a diameter, this is D, is equal to 8 centimeters. Remember then we also want to have our R. Every time we have a circle and we talk about a circle, I always write down D and R. I make sure I put them both down so I know which one I'm talking about, and then when I have my formula, I can just pick which one I need. So if diameter goes all the way across is 8, that means my radius is going to be 4. And we're going to say that the height of this is 7 centimeters. Okay, so we're going to use that same basic formula. Remember, I'm going to remember this one thing for all of my volumes. Area of the base, and I'm going to write it out again just like this, area of the base times the height. And remember, we're talking in this case about the height of the cylinder, okay? So I'm going to do area of the base times the height. Well, again, what's my base? If I look at my cylinder, this is my base right here, and my base is clearly a circle. So how do I find the area of a circle? Area of a circle, pi r squared. And then again, I'm also still multiplying it by the height. And again, the height is referring to the height of the whole prism, or in this case, the cylinder. So I have an h there. Again, if you look at your formula sheet, this is where that formula would come in. And it's right like that on your formula sheet. But I can remember this formula much easier because I already have the area of a circle. I already have that memorized. I know what it is. And it's easy. I can figure out the height from there too by looking at my shape. So let's plug in our numbers. 3.14. Remember, use the 3.14, not the pi button on your calculator. Radius. Well, again, they gave me diameter, but I have my radius right here. So my radius is 4. Now, I like to write it out, 4 times 4, because that is radius squared. 4 squared is 4 times 4. Times the height is 7. When I put all that in my calculator, I multiply it all out. What I wind up with is 351.68 centimeters cubed. Again, remember it's a 3D shape, so my 3 is my, I'm using cubed instead of squared. So again, I use the same basic formula to start with right here. This one here will tell me that how to go proceed for there, because I know how to find the area of a circle. That's the base, and I'm timesing it by the height of the prism. We have another one here. We have a triangular prism. This would have a triangle at the top and a triangle at the bottom. Remember that prisms and pyramids, they're always named for the shape of the base. So we have a triangular base here. This is in the front. Sometimes people make a dotted line across this bottom one just to make it a little bit easier to see. So this is a triangular prism. But again, because it's a triangle, I have a height here on my triangle as well. So I'm going to call this the height 2 inches. I'm going to call the base here 4 inches. And we'll call the entire height of the prism 5 inches. Okay, so again, I'm going to use that same basic formula for volume. Volume is the area of the base, in parentheses, area of the base, because whatever this area is, and the base this time, remember, is going to be a triangle. So the area of the base, and I'm going to multiply that again by the height of the prism. Okay, so again, making my life a little easier here, because I can remember how to find the area of a triangle. It's half base times height, or you might put BH over 2. It does the same thing, okay? Now, but this is where it comes in tricky, because I have a height here on my triangle, but I also have, remember, this height. This height is the height of the prism, the whole prism. So I'm actually going to still write out this word again, height, because I want to remember that this height here that I'm talking about is the height of my entire prism. So I'm going to plug in my numbers, and then I can solve from there. So I have my, remember, this part here is the area of the base, which is half base times height. So I've got half still, times the base. In this case, the base is 4, times the height, which is 2. And then I have this height here, which is the height of the whole prism. So now I'm going to times all that by 5. Okay. Now, a little trick here when you're multiplying by a fraction. Remember, if I can simplify and get rid of it, it makes my life a little simpler, a little easier. So that's what I'm going to do. I can easily say that half of 2 gives me 1. Because if I cut 2 in half, I only get 1. Well, I don't even need 1 when I'm multiplying, because 1 times anything is itself. So I just got rid of that. So now I only have 2 numbers to multiply. I have 4 times 5. So my answer here is 20 inches, and again, I'm cubed. If you didn't want to simplify first, I would have multiplied all this out, the 4 times the 2 times the 5, and then I would have divided everything by 2 or times by 0.5 in that case, because that would work as well. But again, if I can simplify it, remember we're moving towards algebra, so if I can cancel things out or get rid of them, I really want to look to try to do that. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is all of our volumes that we have to do. Again, rectangular prism, cylinder, and triangular prism. Now let's take a look at pyramids. We're going to do the exact same thing with pyramids. I'm going to draw a square this time. I'm going to try to draw off just a little bit. Maybe it's a rectangle. Okay, and I'm going to put a point up here at the top. And what I'm going to do now is draw lines going down to each one of the vertices on my shape here. Okay, not too bad, considering I can't draw, but that one doesn't look too bad. So let's call this a square at the bottom, and let's say this was 3.6, and this is 3.6. And now the height is going to be determined by the height of the prism. So it's going to drop down from this very top point right here. Let me do it in another color. It's going to drop down from this very top point, and it's going to drop down to the very center of the base, whatever my base is, whether it's a rectangle, a square, a triangle, a trapezoid, whatever it is, it's going to be perpendicular to the base. So it's going to go straight down to that dot, okay, preferably straighter than that, and it's going to show me that this is a right angle there because that is my height of my pyramid. We're going to do our formula the exact same way that we did a minute ago. Remember, we're finding the volume. So just a moment ago, we did area of the base. Leave just a little space before you write this. Like right here, you want to leave some space. Area of the base, we're still going to do the same thing. Area of the base times the height. So I'm going to kind of basically do the same thing I did a moment ago. I already know that that base is going to be a square. That's going to be length times width. I'm going to times it by the height. But there is one other little thing I have to do. If you notice, like I've already said a couple times, all of my sides on my pyramid, they all meet up here at the top at a vertex. They all make a point at the very, very top. Whether it's a cone or any other kind of pyramid, it's going to meet up at a point at the top. So because it does that, there's a lot of space. If this didn't meet up there, let's say that I had, again, another square. I'm going to see if I can draw this again over it. Hopefully this won't be too bad. Oops. If I had another square like this and I drew my sides down like this and made a cube, right, here in the front, and then that would be in the back, okay? If I had a cube, you'll notice that that pyramid inside that rectangular prism, it's smaller, right? There's a lot of empty space. I could fill water in there or something else like that, where the place where there is no pyramid. So what I'm actually doing is on the same thing, area of the base times the height of the whole pyramid, but this time I need to remember one other little thing. It's only going to be a third of it. So it's a third of that area of the base times the height. If you kind of think of that, I mean, that's the one thing you have to remember, and it's going to work again for all of it. We're going to do the same formula, but now it's all a third of the area of the base times the height. Hopefully that helps to explain it a little bit. Remember, we also did talk about it in class, and if you still have questions, remember, make sure you come and ask me questions. All right, so again, I already said it's going to be 1/3. We know the area of the base is a square, so it's going to be length times width, and the height of the whole prism. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in my numbers. I have 1/3 times 3.6 times 3.6, because remember it was a square on the bottom this time. And the height is, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you that. The height was 9. Okay, so let's go back to the blue shape. So the red line there, the red height, this is 9, and what are we doing? This is meters. All this is meters. Okay, so this is 9 meters. So we're timesing by 9. Okay? So when I do this, again, if I can simplify, let's simplify what we can. I can get rid of the third by saying a third of 9. Well, 9 divided by 3 is 3, so my 9 changes to a 3. But I got rid of this, got rid of the 1/3, and I also got rid of the 9. I just replaced it with a 3 here. So now I just have to multiply. Let me do another color again. I just have to multiply by 3.6, 3.6, and 3. So when I do that math, it comes out to be 38.88 meters cubed. Because again, it's still volume, it's still 3-dimensional, so it's meters cubed. If you didn't want to simplify first, I would have just multiplied all this 3.6, 3.6, and 9. I would have multiplied the 9, and then I would have divided it all by 3. And I still will come out with the same answer. So if you want to do it that way too, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you are showing your work and make sure that you are coming out with the same answer that I'm coming out with, because you still will. All right, the next one we have is a cone. Same kind of thing. We have this time I kind of draw an upside down V, and then I'm going to make a circle at the bottom, or an oval really at the bottom. Again, the height is going to be perpendicular to the base, so this is going to make a little right angle there, okay? Okay, let's put some measurements on this. We're going to call the radius here, the radius is equal to 5 feet. That would make my diameter be 10 feet. Remember, diameter goes all the way across, radius goes halfway across. And we'll call the height here, we'll call that 10 feet. Okay, same thing applies. We're going to do the exact same thing. Volume equals, remember it's coming to a point at the top. So we have 1/3. That's the only change here, but it's still going to be the area of the base times the height. So again, make sure that you're thinking of it that way. It's area of the base times the height. Because we've already memorized, or we should have already memorized, how to find the area of a circle. So the area of a circle, remember the base this time, this is a circle. Area of the base is pi r squared. And then we have the height of the pyramid, which is h. Okay? So 1/3 times 3.14 times the radius, again. We have r and d, so we're ready for either one, but we needed the r. 5, and it's 5 squared, so that's 5 times 5, times the height, which is 10. Now this time, there's nothing I can simplify, at least not easily, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to go ahead and multiply all of this together, and then I'm going to divide it by 3 at the end. So when I type that on my calculator and I do all the multiplication, and then I do division by 3, I get 261.66666. It repeats. But remember, we always think about money, so it's always 2 numbers after the decimal, and it has to round up because 666 rounds up to 67, and this is feet cubed. Okay, so there is our cones to find that area of, the volume of a cone. We can do the exact same thing if we had a triangular pyramid. We would just find the area of the base. So if it was a triangular pyramid, I'm just going to go ahead and find the area of the base and then multiply it by the height of the pyramid again. So this is how you're going to work on all those. If you have any questions, do make sure you're jotting them down. Make sure you have notes on this, and you want to go back and look at the quiz that I type on Edmodo so that you can see how you do on this.